In 1989, physicist Hank Pym discovered a way to alter the space between atoms, splitting the distance to shrink or enlarge physical matter. Knowing the horrific military applications of this discovery, he immediately buried his research and cut ties with the government to prevent an arms race. Decades later, that secret is out. Pym's former protege, Darren Cross, has ousted him from his own company and successfully replicated the shrinking technology. Cross plans to mass-produce the discovery as an armored, militarized suit called the Yellow Jacket. He is actively preparing to sell the weapon to Hydra, a deeply entrenched underworld syndicate. Cross is completely ruthless in his development process. He continuously tests the unstable shrinking process on live animal subjects, which regularly reduces them to microscopic specks of organic gore. Pym realizes he has to steal the Yellow Jacket directly out of his own impenetrable corporate fortress to stop a global disaster.
The problem is his age. The physical toll of the shrinking process is too severe for him to execute the heist himself. Enter Scott Lang. He is a highly skilled burglar who has just finished serving a 3-year prison sentence for a high-profile corporate robbery. Scott is completely broke and legally barred from seeing his young daughter, Cassie. He desperately needs a massive influx of cash to pay years of back child support and prove he is a capable father. Pym leverages that exact desperation. He plants a rumor in the criminal underworld about a lucrative, unguarded vault in his own home. Scott takes the bait, breaks in, cracks the safe, and walks away with a strange vintage motorcycle suit. Curious, Scott tries the suit on and accidentally triggers the shrinking mechanism. He is immediately plunged into a terrifying trial by fire, nearly drowning in a bathtub drain and surviving a violent trip through the inside of a vacuum cleaner. Surviving that chaotic gauntlet is exactly what Pym was looking for. Scott has the physical resilience to survive the technology and the cat burglar skills to infiltrate Pymtech. Before he can pull off the heist, Scott has to learn how to fight at half an inch tall. He spends weeks mastering martial arts and learning to exploit the physics of the suit, rapidly shrinking and growing to generate massive kinetic momentum in his punches. The second requirement is building an infiltration crew. Scott uses a specialized earpiece to telepathically command different species of ants, organizing them into a highly disciplined tactical unit. But there is a strict biological limit to this technology. Pym explicitly warns Scott never to override the suit's regulator to shrink past a certain threshold. Doing so is an absolute death sentence. This gauge illustrates the danger. The slider tracks the safe scale. Striking this red line means shrinking subatomic, falling infinitely into a microscopic vacuum. Pym lost his wife, Janet, to this void decades ago, when she shrank past the limit to disarm a missile. For his final exam, Pym sends Scott to steal a signal decoy from an old warehouse. The warehouse turns out to be the Avengers' headquarters. Scott ends up fighting the Falcon, successfully shrinking down to infiltrate the Avengers' flight pack and destroying its circuitry from the inside. Taking down an Avenger proves Scott has mastered the momentum and mechanics of the suit. He is finally ready to hit Pymtech. The infiltration begins during the Hydra sale. Scott rides the building's water pipes to bypass security, while his ant army completely fries the server backups to erase Darren's data. But Darren anticipated the hit. As soon as Scott reaches the vault, Darren traps him inside a glass containment box, corners Hank Pym, and shoots the old man point-blank in the chest. The stealth mission instantly collapses into an open firefight. Scott shatters his glass cage, neutralizes the heavily armed Hydra agents, and provides enough cover for a wounded Pym to escape the building just as the explosives trigger. Darren grabs the Yellow Jacket suit and escapes to the roof, boarding a getaway helicopter. Unwilling to let him leave, Scott shrinks down, intercepts the aircraft mid-flight, and boards it. The meticulous heist is completely gone. Darren puts on the Yellow Jacket armor, and the two men tear the inside of the helicopter apart, eventually falling out of the sky and plummeting into a residential backyard. Darren survives the crash and decides to make it personal. He tracks Scott down to his ex-wife's house and takes young Cassie hostage in her own bedroom. Scott launches a desperate assault, but he hits a wall. Darren's yellow jacket armor is completely sealed and impervious to blunt force. Every attack Scott throws is effortlessly deflected. Scott realizes there is only one way to breach the armor. He has to break Pym's absolute rule and manually bypass his suit's safety regulator. He shrinks to a subatomic scale, passing right between the molecules of Darren's titanium plating. Once inside, Scott violently shreds the internal circuitry, causing the yellow jacket to implode on itself. The threat is eliminated, but the cost is absolute. Scott has willfully condemned himself to eternal isolation in the subatomic void to ensure his daughter gets to grow up. Inside the quantum realm, Scott shrinks continuously into a silent, infinite kaleidoscope. The only thing anchoring his mind is the faint, echoing sound of Cassie crying out for him. Hearing her voice, he refuses to give up. Scott grabs the modified signal disk he stole from the Avengers, slots it directly into his broken regulator, and hotwires the suit, violently forcing himself to grow back to normal size. Scott reappears in the bedroom and embraces his daughter. Recognizing the sacrifice he made to stop a heavily armed psycho, the responding police officers quietly look the other way, and a contact reaches out to tell him the Avengers are looking to recruit his specific set of skills. Scott walked into this job as a disgraced, desperate ex-convict. By pushing himself past the physical limits of Pym's technology, he proved his worth, saving the world and finally becoming the hero his daughter always believed he was.
And that's how the incredible story comes to an end. Every decision, every sacrifice, and every battle led to this unforgettable finale. If you enjoyed this movie recap, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more detailed movie explanations and cinematic story recaps. Also, hit the notification bell so you'll be the first to know whenever we upload a new video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next movie recap.